This happened in the summer of 2022, during a solo road trip I took from Jackson, Mississippi to Durango, Colorado. I was 25 back then, just trying to clear my head after a rough breakup. I'd planned the drive so I wouldn't have to stop for an overnight stay, just one long, straight shot. It would be cheaper that way, and honestly, I needed the silence. Once I got out of Mississippi and crossed into Arkansas, the road became empty. No houses, no street lights, no other cars for miles. Just trees and open sky. It was peaceful at first, but also kind of lonely, and that feeling only got stronger the farther I drove. I left Jackson around 6 p.m., after triple-checking my stuff. I had snacks in the front seat, an energy drink in the cup holder, and my music playing low. The sun was setting behind me as I passed through the last stretch of city lights. After that, it was all empty highway. An hour or two in, I realized my gas was down to half. I wasn't worried yet, but I remembered reading that once you hit the rural parts, gas stations could be 20 to 30 miles apart, so I figured I'd better fill up early. Eventually, I spotted a tiny gas station on the side of the road. It looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. 4 pumps, a flickering sign, and a closed-up convenience store. Nobody else was there. I pulled in and started filling up. The gas came out really slow, like 1 gallon every minute. I leaned against my car staring at the pump. That's when I noticed headlights in the distance slowly getting closer. At first, I didn't think anything of it. But then the car passed the station and suddenly braked. It backed up, slowly, then pulled into the lot, parking right behind me. That's when I got a weird feeling in my stomach. The guy got out of the car but didn't go straight to the pump. He just stood there, staring at me. He wore a loose gray hoodie and jeans, and his face was pale under the lights. I glanced over and gave him a small smile, hoping to look friendly without inviting anything. But he didn't smile back. He didn't even blink. Eventually, he started pumping gas, and I breathed a little easier. Maybe he's just tired, I thought. I finished pumping, screwed the cap back on, and got into my car without looking over again. As I pulled back onto the highway, I told myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. 3 hours later, it started raining. Not just a light drizzle, heavy, pounding rain that made it hard to see even with the wipers on full speed. I'd now been driving for nearly 6 hours. My hands were shaking from the cold soda and nerves. I tried turning up the radio, eating something, even cracking the window to stay alert, but I couldn't keep my eyes open much longer. Around 1:15 a.m., I spotted another gas station and pulled in. It was old, run down, and completely empty, just like the last one, but the lights were still on. I filled up my tank and parked at the side of the building. I checked my phone for the nearest town, but there was nothing nearby, just trees and darkness. I figured I could take a 20-minute nap, just enough to recharge without losing too much time. I set an alarm, leaned the seat back, and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, it was still raining. My alarm hadn't gone off yet. It had only been about 15 minutes. I sat up, blinked a few times, and looked around. That's when I noticed a car at the pump, the same car from earlier. I couldn't believe it. My stomach turned cold. What were the chances? I leaned forward to look inside, but I didn't see anyone. Not in the driver's seat, not standing outside. It was like the car had driven itself there. I started panicking. I looked around the lot. The rain was loud, but I couldn't hear footsteps, couldn't see movement, just shadows and silence. Turned the key and threw my car in reverse. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw him, not behind the car, not by the pump. He was in my back seat, sitting completely still, his pale face watching me through the mirror. His eyes were wide and unblinking, and his lips looked blue in the dim light. I couldn't breathe. I screamed and kicked my door open, throwing myself into the rain-soaked parking lot. My car, still in reverse, began rolling slowly. I got up and ran into the trees behind the station, slipping on wet leaves and branches. I didn't stop until I was deep in the woods. From there, I watched as my car rolled, then stopped. The man slid into the front seat and drove off. He stole my car, my phone, my money, everything. I stood there drenched, heart pounding so hard, it hurt. I looked back at the gas station and then I saw it. He left his car behind. I ran to it, hoping maybe he left something useful inside. The doors were unlocked, keys still in the ignition. There were grocery bags in the back seat and a phone on the passenger floor. I picked it up, locked, but I could still call 911. That's when it hit me. This wasn't even his car. The bags had someone else's name on the receipt. The car was registered to a woman from Louisiana. The phone wallpaper showed a young couple. Whoever they were, this guy had done the same thing to them. Except they didn't get away. The police came about. 40 minutes later, they searched the area, but he was long gone. The officer who took my statement said this guy likely had been following me from the first stop. He probably snuck into my back seat while I was in the bathroom or dozing off at the second gas station. They think he wanted me to start driving so he could attack once we were far enough away. We never found him, and neither did the couple whose car he'd taken before mine. I got lucky. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Because this wasn't just a creepy guy staring at me at a gas station. This was someone who didn't plan on letting me live. This happened in February of last year, 2024. I was 26 at the time, living alone in a small rental cabin in a quiet part of Virginia called Maple Hollow. The town itself was barely on the map, just a cluster of houses surrounded by thick trees and winding roads. My nearest neighbor lived about a quarter-mile down the hill. That day was normal, or at least it started that way. I had worked a short shift at the grocery store in town and got home a little after 4 p.m. It had snowed the day before, and the sky was still gray, like it hadn't decided yet if it wanted to snow again. I had no plans, so I figured I'd heat up some leftovers and watch a movie. Around 6:30, I got a call from my cousin Jalen. He's a mechanic and said he'd just finished a job, but his car wouldn't start. He asked if I could pick him up from the shop and maybe grab some burgers on the way back. Jalen's helped me out plenty of times, so I didn't mind. I said sure and grabbed my coat from the hook near the door. As soon as I opened the front door, I jumped so hard I nearly dropped my keys. A man was standing right there. Right there. Maybe a foot away from the door, just standing on the porch like he'd been waiting for me. He didn't move or say anything at first. He was wearing a bulky winter jacket and had a dark scarf wrapped around his neck and face, covering everything but his eyes. His eyes didn't look scared or surprised, just blank. My heart was pounding. I thought maybe he was about to attack me. But then he slowly said, "Sorry, I was just about to knock." I tried to act normal, even though my stomach was tight. I asked him if he needed something. He took a second, then asked if I was someone named Tony or Tyrell. I told him no. He just nodded once and turned to leave. I stepped outside and locked the door behind me, watching him walk down my long driveway until he disappeared into the trees near the road. I stood there for a minute, just trying to calm down. The whole thing felt off. He didn't act like a normal person who knocked on the wrong door. He didn't look lost. He didn't even seem cold, and it was freezing outside. But I shook it off, got in my car, and drove into town. I picked up Jalen. We grabbed burgers and I dropped him off at his apartment. It was around 9 p.m. when I got back home. It was still snowing a little and everything looked peaceful. Inside, I kicked off my boots and heated up some tea. I turned on a movie, curled up under a blanket on the couch, and let the food coma hit me hard. The cabin was warm and quiet except for the movie playing in the background. I must have watched 2 full movies before I got up to head to bed. As I passed by the front door, something made me stop. That weird man from earlier popped into my head again, and I suddenly felt the urge to double-check outside. I went to the door and peeked through the peephole. At first, everything looked fine. No one on the porch, no sound but the wind brushing against the trees. But then something caught my eye, barely noticeable in the snow. I opened the door slowly and looked closer. There were fresh footprints in the thin layer of snow coming up the driveway. The tracks curved near where my car had been parked, then veered off into the woods on the left side of my yard, into the part where the trees grow thick and close together. From my front porch, I couldn't see where the tracks ended. I felt a cold sweat start to form on my neck. The man had come back. I locked the door again, this time double-checking it. Then I turned off all the lights and peeked out different windows. I didn't see anyone, but the idea that someone had been standing outside while I was inside, eating and watching movies, it made my skin crawl. I grabbed my phone and called 911. I told the operator everything, that a stranger had come to my door, that I saw fresh footprints and I was alone in the house. She stayed calm and told me to stay on the line while officers were sent. While I talked, I heard something, a soft scraping sound. I paused. It stopped. I told the operator what I thought I heard, but when I went quiet again, everything was silent. Then bam! Loud thud slammed against the back door. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking as I ran toward the hallway. There was another thud, and another. I crouched low and peeked toward the back door. I couldn't see anyone clearly, but something or someone was definitely moving outside. The light inside made the glass reflect, so I only saw a shifting shadow, but it was enough to tell me this person wasn't just trying to get my attention. They were trying to break in. The thuds were heavy, like something metal hitting wood. It wasn't a knock, it was an attack. The operator was still on the line, telling me to find somewhere safe to hide or get out of the house if I could. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her voice. I decided to run for it. I grabbed my car keys from the table and slipped out the front door, locking it behind me as fast as I could. I sprinted down the steps and across the yard, not even stopping to look back. My boots slid a little in the snow, and I nearly fell, but I didn't stop. I got to my car, flung open the door, and hit the lock button the second I was inside. I started the engine and peeled out of the driveway, heading straight toward town. I waited at a gas station until the police called me back. When they got to my house, they found the back door busted in. Muddy footprints were all over the kitchen floor, but no one was inside. Whoever it was, they were gone. All I could give them was a description of the guy from earlier, but there was no proof it was the same person. And honestly, part of me still wonders if it was someone else entirely. They never caught him. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't left when I did. But the scariest part? That night had started off completely normal. Just another boring winter evening. And then, out of nowhere, my whole life could have changed. Now every time I hear a knock or see someone walking down the street a little too slow, I remember that night. Because sometimes danger doesn't kick the door down right away. Sometimes it stands there quietly, just waiting.